And yes, you may have just seen this session is streaming live on YouTube. And we're also going to be recording the session on Zoom. Okay, so if you don't want to appear in the Zoom video or the YouTube, please make sure your camera is off. I think we're also going to mute everyone apart from the speakers just for now to avoid some background noise, but do feel free to unmute yourself if you're going to ask a question. So my name is Rachel Pattinson and I manage digital research and social innovation programs at Open Lab at Newcastle University. And I'm your host for today. We've also got a couple of my colleagues here on the call. Emily Barker, our communications officer, is moderating this session. So she's going to be helping us with any technical problems. She'll be sticking some messages in the chat, and she'll also be helping to look after the Q&A. And we also have Karen Parkhouse here on the call as well. Karen is a careers advisor at Newcastle University, and she particularly looks after the School of Computing. So she may also be putting some messages in the chat with links to resources and answering your questions over there as well. Yes, okay, so some of you will have been to the session that was earlier this afternoon, which was all about early career research. And so I think this is the kind of one of the counterparts to that, in that we're going to be focusing on the digital industry. And I'm really excited to have 4 amazing panelists with us this afternoon to speak to that subject. So I think what I'm going to do first is just read out our panelists, and then I'll get, if you could all just give us a wave and say hi. So our first speaker this afternoon is Stephanie Clish. Steph is the head of operations at WordNerds, and they provide text analysis and insight software. Hi, Steph. Hey. Great. Second speaker is Helena Hill. Helena is an experienced design strategist at Helena Hill Consulting. Third speaker this afternoon is Robyn Townsend. Robyn is a lab engineer at Barclays UK Ventures. Hi, Robyn.
Hi, guys.
Hello. And finally, final speaker is Shaun Allan. Shaun is the CEO at Vector 76XR. Hi, Shaun.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. Great. Okay. So the structure of the session this afternoon, what we're going to do is have some introductions from each of our speakers, and then we're going to move into a Q&A session straight on from that, really. So while our speakers are introducing themselves, please feel free to put questions on the chat, either to a particular panelist or to the whole panel. And then also, yeah, we'll either read out some of those questions in the chat, or you can come onto video and ask the panelists yourselves. So we're going to begin with 5-minute introductions from each of the panelists. And what I've asked them to do is to introduce themselves, tell us a bit about their organisation or the area they work in, and just any opening comments they want to tell us about their part of the digital sector and the sorts of roles you might find there. So let's start in the order we said hello to people. So let's start with Steph, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Steph. I'm just going to quickly share my screen, if that's okay.
Emily, you might have to help with that.
And I'll... Okay, so hopefully you can all see that. Yeah, so I'm Steph. I'm head of operations at WordNerds. Oh. We are we're a SaaS platform that combines artificial intelligence with advanced linguistics to surface insight in large amounts of unstructured text data. So for a lot of organizations that work with us, we help them find the true voice of their customer. But we can use our platform for loads of different use cases. In terms of the core functions of the platform, we can link with real-time data sources to help organizations understand problems with their product or service in real time. So by providing alerts that are triggered by specific events. So for example, if people start talking about a specific topic or they're talking about something negatively, we can let them know that that's happening. We can also link with historical data sets and provide you with information that you didn't know. So the unknown unknowns. And we can do that by volume. So understanding how many people does an issue affect. By anguish, how deeply does this issue affect a group of people? What topics are people talking about in that data, and how do they feel about them? We can also help with the market research and focus grouping piece. So if an organization understands the questions that they want the answers to, they can use our platform to help surface those answers, helping them test hypotheses, and also using our smart segmentation, you can filter the data by meaning rather than just the vocabulary that's used. We don't just work with social data, so we're not a social listening platform per se. We work with any data source that uses unstructured text data. So surveys, emails, web chats, reviews, CRMs, forums, blogs, all of those sorts of things we can use the platform for. And we can also help with that comparative piece, so helping organizations understand where they sit amongst their competitors in relation to a particular theme or topic. So as this is a career-focused event, I thought I'd talk a little bit more about the business end of WordNerds, so the type of company that we are, where we're at now, where we've been, and where we're heading. So we're a startup. We got our first round of investment this time last year, so we're venture backed. And when we got that investment, the first thing that we focused on was getting our product up to scratch. So making sure we had something that was really good. It mightn't have lots of features, but in terms of the features that we focused on being really good at that. And that was obviously the text analysis stuff. Once we were happy with that, we moved on to proving we could sell it. And so we focused around all of our systems and processes around selling. We're sort of happy with where we are now in terms of that. We haven't necessarily found product market fit as of yet, but we've got a number of customers using us for a variety of use cases, and we're able to provide value to all of them. So our next sort of focus is the next 2 points on my slide, scaling and also going for our next raise, so our next round of investment. And obviously in terms of the scaling, that's looking at adding members to the team across all departments and understanding how the metrics correlate when we do that, and getting them to correlate as positively as we can when we're adding new members of the team. So that's our next challenge. So I thought I'd look at sort of what's it like working in a startup, because there's lots of rumors about startups, and they're just offices full of beanbags and ping pong tables. We actually have neither of those in our office. We've got a really nice office, but we don't have any of those. And I think it's a really interesting environment to work in, particularly in a tech startup. One of our key unique selling points is a feature that's been built with cutting edge technology. And we're ahead of the curve right now in terms of our competitors. So none of our competitors have this particular feature. And so staying ahead of the curve is really important to us. And so research is a core focus for our engineering team and the product team. And also we try and make sure our decision making is evidence based. So as well as doing research into what's possible with the product, we're also gathering in evidence from all of our key stakeholders to help us sort of provide direction as to where we're going. I guess highlighting that the importance of research to us, we already collaborate with universities. We have done in the past, and we're currently sponsoring a PhD at the minute. So we're really keen on finding knowledge outside of our organisation, which, you know, we're a small team. We need to do that, but we're also keen on developing knowledge in WordNerds as well. And so continued professional development is kind of a core focus of ours particularly in the engineering and product departments. And yeah, we actually also do yoga. We've got a pool table and we've got a foosball table, so maybe we're not too far from some of the rumours. And in terms of what we look for in new hires, we describe them as swans. So we're looking for people who are smart, they have good work ethic, they're ambitious, and they're nice. And those are kind of, we actually score people on those in our initial interviews, as well as a couple of other things, but those are the kind of core 4 things that we look for in people. We also look for people who can work independently, but also collaboratively. Both of those are really important for us, particularly small team in a startup. You need to be able to do both. Having that drive to succeed, and also people who are passionate and have a thirst for learning. And we've recently been through a few rounds of recruitment recently. So we've brought on 3 new people, or are bringing on 3 new people to the team. And I thought I'd highlight things that have helped people stand out to us. So, you know, everyone sends in their CV, and you get lots of people who have very similar experience and background and things like that. So what can help people stand out in their application? Firstly, research in or having a background in a field of interest to us is really important, and definitely pricks our ears. The latest person who we've welcomed to the team wrote the best covering letter across all of the applications we received. She ended up getting the job, and initially she stood out to us with an amazing covering letter. And I think one thing, so I go through all of the applications that we get, and one thing that I still find quite surprising is the amount of covering letters that we receive that are very probably like blanket covering letters that have been sent to everyone who that person's applied to. And also the lack of covering letters. A lot of people just, particularly when they're applying through a LinkedIn ad, they just supply their CV. But a good covering letter can go a long way, particularly if you show why you think you're a good fit, not only for us, but why you think we're a good fit for you. And also showing a bit of your personality. You know, we like to have fun, we like to have a laugh, we like to understand, you know, the wider aspects of a person who's going to be joining the team. And so if you can do that, that's really cool. People who've looked into us and done their research into us as a company, you know, it sounds really obvious stuff, but conversations, you can always tell people who've done their reading and who've made that extra effort. So things like that. And then we always say to our applicants, there's 2 parts to a job role with us. One is the things that are outlined in the job advert that they've read, but with us at the particular point of our journey that we're at, there's a whole other side to the job role of being a part of a core team in a startup, and, you know, embracing that sort of, you know, the high risk, high excitement, madness of a startup journey is something that we look for in kind of people when they're applying to us. So yeah, that's a really very quick sort of explanation about what we do and what we look for. We're in the process of recruiting further. So if anyone's sort of interested in hearing a bit more about what we're looking for, or would like to talk about anything really, further, my details are on there, and yeah, I'd love to chat to you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. So I'm going to say let's hold questions for now. We'll bring up, there are a couple coming in for Steph's presentation, but we'll come to those in the Q&A because other panelists might have some interesting thoughts on them too. Let's instead move to the next intro, which will go to Helena, if that's all right.
There you go, just unmute myself. That would start, wouldn't it? I certainly don't have as many wonderful screens as that, but I do have just a very quick, very quick introduction to myself, really, and a little bit about what I do. What I do generally is just to quickly sort of run through, I wear two hats. So I'm a consultant, and I'm a consultant in user experience strategy. And I also consult in service design as well. So UX basically being that kind of part of the, or kind of mid part of the whole customer experience or the service that a company or an organization offers its customers and users, whether that be sort of via a digital interface, for example, but then we also consider the much wider service that a company or an organization works with, and each interaction that takes place in that whole service. So UX is a really kind of small part of that bigger service design. So basically at the moment where we're at really is actually in 2020. We are at a stage now where, and even in the current crisis that we're in at the moment, we're at a stage where customers, I should say, and users will actually consider now experience to be as important as product and price when they're making purchasing decisions, which is why it's absolutely critical, potentially as we start to come out of lockdown and business start getting back to whatever some sort of normal looks like. It's really, really critical that they start to consider bringing in UX expertise, service design expertise, and what that sort of looks like to them in terms of what they offer to the customers. So a bit of an introduction to me, very briefly, is I, as I said just there, experienced strategist and consultant. So I work with all kinds of different businesses, from startups through to SMEs, through to global organisations. We know multi-million pound turnover with tens of thousands of employees. And it's quite interesting actually that there's a lot of sort of similarities between those global organizations and the ones right at the beginning of their journey, at the startup journey. And you'd be surprised, for example, knowing who buyers and customers are, whether they're two different types of people, for example. Who are they? What are their frustrations? What are their needs? Who do we need to be speaking to? So that's kind of my first hat. I'm also doing quite a lot of speaking around UX, not so much this year, obviously, but I have done a little bit nonetheless in the last few months. I also work closely with the Student and Graduate Enterprise department at Northumbria University. I'm a mentor and coach there for those students and graduates who have set up or are setting up their own businesses, just to ensure that they kind of get that user-centric approach right from the very start. I'm also UX and service design digital mentor at Generator as well. If you haven't heard Generator, they're well worth getting in contact with. They provide brilliant business support and all kinds of networking events as well around the region. And they're still managing to do that brilliantly online at the moment. I'm also vice chair at the Sphere Network. We promote digital influence, leadership and transformation, and obviously we work closely with Digital Union as well. When I'm not consulting and mentoring, I like playing with Lego. That sounds a little odd, I know, but that's kind of build lots of Lego. I'm always walking these three when I'm not in the office, and I've got a bit of an unhealthy obsession with Frank Lloyd Wright, the architect. So that's a little bit of me, and I do have a life outside UX. So that's a little bit about what I do, and that was just that kind of quote that I gave you earlier about the importance now of UX, and the fact that I believe there's going to be a lot of, I think there's going to be a huge amount of opportunity for those people who really want to sort of move forward with that. In terms of careers, around what I do. Obviously, user experience, I'm more of a strategist, so I kind of come top level and kind of manage how it takes place and how it's embedded in organizations. Well, they're UX designers. I'm sure that some of you are probably taking UX related courses at the minute, which may include maybe user interface design, information architecture, interaction design. Interestingly, actually, I've just come off a call, Rachel, and that was with Northumbria University around interaction design and helping to sort of inform what that course is going to look like. So there's a lot of opportunity at the moment to get involved in these types of courses and kind of educating yourself around what's available once you finish those courses. And that was something that very much came up in that call about, trying to, I've just seen that. HCI folks like Lego too. Yeah, that's not just me. There are lots of...
I don't know if you, the screen sharing might have just stopped.
Oh, no, that's fine.
That was meant to.
No, I just wanted to show those few slides. So there are lots of careers out there. I can talk probably from my side and what's available there. Shaun and Robyn, I'm sure that we'll have lots more to talk to you about in what's available in their specialist fields as well. So it's a fascinating industry that we're in, and I would thoroughly recommend this as something that you do look into in more detail. I think the opportunities going forward are going to be massive if you if you choose the right organization, or even choose to to go down some kind of route on your own. But there's lots of support out there and lots of people that you can talk to for advice around this kind of thing. So on that note, I know that we'll probably have questions, so I'm going to finish there, but that's a little bit about me and what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I'm sure you'd like to hear from Robyn and Shaun now.
Sure, thank you, Helena. Let's move on to Robyn next.
Hi guys, I don't have any slides. I hope that's okay. I was going to talk to you for a minute. So I'm the lab engineer at Tuss Park Eagle Labs. We're based on Granger Street in Newcastle, and that's part of the kind of Barclays Eagle Labs network. So if you haven't come across that before, we've got kind of 26 sites across the UK. We are a kind of incubator space for startup businesses and kind of scale up businesses. So we're one of the largest or the largest incubator site in the UK. Just because of the size of our network. And we've got labs from Aberdeen down to Bournemouth and Southampton. We've got one in the Isle of Man, one in Jersey, and one in Belfast as well. So Eagle Labs started out just in 2015. So for Barclays, it's a relatively kind of new thing that's growing really quickly. We started by taking over kind of underutilized branch spaces and then converting them into business incubators. 10 of those spaces at the moment have maker spaces in them. So that's what I do as the lab engineer. So whilst all the spaces are there to offer co-working, office space, business incubation, business mentoring, I'm there to help with the Industry 4.0 part. So what they mean by that really is that I'm there to help people kind of demystify or understand Industry 4.0 and how it can be used in their business. And by that, Barclays kind of means IoT, additive manufacturing, AR, VR, AI and blockchain, and I don't know about all of those things, but yeah, so that's kind of what I'm there to do, and to help people kind of understand and utilize those areas, and also to help kind of build new products. So the biggest core of my job is with 3D printers. I do a lot of kind of digital design and fabrication, help people grow things from idea to kind of physical product, or into something digital if that's the direction that they're going as well. Well, I'll give you a bit more background about me outside of Eagle Labs, just because I'm a little bit different, I guess, as an engineer. So that's my role now, but I graduated 10 years ago with a degree in glass and ceramics from the University of Sunderland, and I worked as a practicing artist for some years. However, trying to do that during a recession was perhaps a bold move on my part, maybe. And so I've kind of branched out across the years to do kind of a range of different things. So I've been working in that business support section now for about 10 years. I've been making other people's products and other people's designs for them. I went through kind of a spell of kind of doing some work in CNC fabrication, and I've worked in Fab Lab Sunderland, if anyone's come across that, or the Fab Lab kind of network. A lot of them are very different, but they all have the same ambitions. So I worked there for a while doing, you know, the same sort of thing I'm doing for Eagle Labs now, but with much more of a student focus. So supporting businesses and supporting students to kind of grow their ideas from the ground up, really. So that's just kind of a quick high level overview. I'm quite happy to go into a bit more detail if anyone has any particular questions, or if anyone wants to know anything more about Barclays Eagle Labs. Our site is labs.uk and .barclays, or just reach out with any questions directly.
Okay, and thank you, Robyn. So let's have the final intro, which is from Shaun, last but not least.
Hi, everyone. I'll try and briefly go over what we do. So I run a company called Vector 76. Occasionally we tag on the XR just so people understand what we do. So I set up Vector in around about 2008. From day one, we've always maintained that we're a virtual reality company. That was the kind of the mission statement we started with. Even though in the past I've been involved in web development, graphic design, sound design, all sorts of stuff. We were very, very highly 100% focused on being a VR company. In 2008, there was no such thing as the modern day headsets. So what we used to do and how we started was in environments like Second Life and OpenSim. So we used to work quite a lot in the education sector, building presence for universities and schools and that sort of thing. And then that obviously progressed into full-on immersive VR pretty much once Oculus went onto Kickstarter. Like a lot of other people around the world, we backed them. I've always had a very good direct relationship with them following that. And as a business, starting in 2008 was pretty tough, especially when you're trying to sell something that doesn't exist over a phone. But once the headsets came along, it made it a lot easier for us in the sense that people could, they're very visual and people could get what we could do and what we could bring to their business. At the moment, the type of people we work with is really, really varied. On one hand, we work quite a lot with utility and energy companies. During lockdown, our work actually is massively increased. A lot of the bigger companies, such as Helena was describing earlier on, were kind of like on the brink of jumping into VR or XR, as we call it now. Made that leap of faith once the lockdown kicked in. So we're working with oil and gas companies on training modules and simulation, bringing them all together from remote points of the world to train them in one virtual space, maybe up to, I think it's 12 up to 20 people as avatars in the same space going through a learning module. But that can be viewed by a limitless amount of other people who are just kind of dropping in to view the thing. So it ranges from that type of work to, as you might expect as well, we're getting very heavily involved again, I'll say again, in virtual events. We did our first virtual event in Second Life in 2010 when we were streaming bands and DJs live from what was the Evolution Festival, which was run by Jim, who obviously was a massive, the main part of Generator, which Helena mentioned. So we're kind of back at the start of what some of the stuff we were doing 10 years ago, where we're now getting asked by a lot of big music industry super brands to kind of get involved and help them with virtual events because their industry is pretty much crippled at the minute. So it goes from that end to individuals. Sometimes we get involved in startups. To be honest, a lot of pretty much the decisions come down to me as to what we get involved in. But if something is a bit different and it excites or ticks a few boxes for me, then that is what we'll get involved in. We're currently working with a guy called Selva over in Software City, who is developing a virtual tourism platform called iMersive. So I'm now the CTO of that and quite heavily involved. We also work with a new spin-out company from Newcastle Uni called XR Therapeutics, where we're using obviously XR, mainly VR in a cave system, to help treat folk with autism, particularly young people. So it's a real cross section that the type of work we do. Over and above that, when it comes to maybe potential career paths and all that sort of stuff, we totally totally kind of see the value in people doing degrees and being involved in unis and all the rest of it. But make no mistake, if we have some maverick come in who can do, we'll take them on. In fact, it's probably more likely we'll take them on. We like people who, again, similar to the WordNerds folk, we like people who are nice, we like people who think on their own feet, research stuff themselves. And for me, I get value of if someone comes in and tells me something about the XR space that I don't know, that is a massive bonus, because I spend my life pretty much researching this all the time, and I've done for a long time. So yeah, if you can come in and kind of hit the ground running, whether it's a coder, designer, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Because what we do when we're developing immersive experiences, if you think of them almost like little movies, so we have someone, or we need someone in all these different roles. They don't have to be the best coder in the world, the best designer in the world, the best 3D person in the world. But we need people who can appreciate other people's disciplines. That's very important. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It would take another 15 minutes for me to describe my career path to get to where I am, but I'll do it briefly. I did graphic design when I was at Newcastle College at Bath Lane in the 80s. I left and set up an 8-bit games company in 1983, where that was my first business pretty much. So learned an awful lot then. Then set up a graphic design company down in Dean Street in Newcastle called Absolute, where we did a lot of work with an independent record label called Kitchenware back then. A chance afternoon in the Crown Posada led to me setting up a record label with the backing of Kitchenware Records. So I set up a dance label in 1991. That ran for about 3-4 years. I went and did a master's degree at Teesside in 3D, which is how I kind of ended up doing what I do now. But in the meantime, in 95, I helped set up the online presence for a then fledgling label called Global Underground, who went on to be probably the biggest independent dance label in the world at that point. And then, then went to work at Utechnics for 6-7 years, working on AAA racing games. This will sound really crass, but I got a bit bored with that. So left, went into web development for an easier life. Did that a while at Sunderland Uni, and from Sunderland Uni set up Vector 76 in 2008. You had enough?
Well, that's just such an incredible career path, Shaun. You seem to have done everything. Okay, well, let's having had these intros, and they were all fascinating. I think let's move straight on to the questions that we've had coming through the chat, and just an encouragement to everyone else on the call, do submit questions through the chat. We will get us through as many as we can in the remaining time that we have. So firstly, we had a couple of questions through from Carlos. Carlos, do you want to ask one of your questions in person?
Sure, thanks. Thank you very much for the speakers. That was really useful and really interesting. I think there was a little bit of discussion in the chat, but primarily I was sort of interested in your opinions on what do companies value the most beyond the technical skills. Some of you already mentioned, being able to do the research yourself, being collaborative with other teammates and other sorts of so-called more like soft skills. But I want to hear your views on what do enterprises really value beyond the technical skills.
Any of the panel who'd particularly like to speak to that one?
I'll go then. Yeah, I mean, it's basically backing up what I said before. It's purely down to attitude as far as we're concerned. People with the right attitude, I think it's best to say. The attitude to get a job done, the attitude to be nice to other people that they're working with and appreciate their roles. Yeah, all down to attitude.
I think also as well, I mean, from my point of view, it's a willingness to learn.
Yes.
And, you know, being open-minded as to what else, you know, is available. Yeah, I think it's rare now to go into a position and stay in it. I mean, not in terms of moving to another company necessarily, but in terms of discipline. And I think they're so closely related in so many ways. That it's, you know, being open-minded as to what else is available, you know, in that kind of discipline is really important. And you might find that you go in, for example, as an interaction designer and find that actually it's UX or it's, you know, information architecture or something like that. So being, you know, being very aware of what's going on around you, what other opportunities are available to you, and just what I think Shaun said there is absolutely spot on.
I think also it's company dependent. So sort of every company has different values, and they're all looking for slightly different things in people. I think a lot more of companies maybe to similar to WordNerds would be looking for all the things that everyone's just described there, you know, sort of really good attitude and thirst for learning and all of those sorts of things. But I think looking at a company's values and understanding, you know, what's really important to them outside of, you know, the kind of KPIs that they're focused on, and seeing if you have the same values, I think that'll help you understand whether there's a good fit or not.
Yeah, I mean, and also just from our perspective, I think, you know, definitely what Helena said is our number one, especially when you're looking at kind of Eagle Labs. We could be asked to support such a massive range of businesses that I think we know we're never going to get an employee on our team that actually knows all of these things, right? So, you know, really having not just a willingness to learn, but a real desire to actually jump in feet first, should I say, to a project that's well over their heads, but also be really communicative about kind of working, you know, with the rest of the team to bring in all of those other skills and really help kind of educate our clients and what have you, so that they can kind of move that forward. So those things really do come across strongly if we're looking for new candidates.
Everyone. Next question on the chat is from Adam. Adam, would you like to ask your question? If not, I can ask for you. Up to you.
Hi, sorry about that. I was just getting a bit quiet in my house. Yeah, I was just really interested to see about how you develop these skills within startups. I got a few answers inside the chat there. I think it's more just my own sort of value of my own work and my skills. I'm more interested in, if I go into a startup in those environments, they can be quite fast paced and very focused on getting the job done essentially. And so there's not really that opportunity maybe necessarily to focus on a particular area or to maybe get some sort of guidance from people who are experts in that area. So I was more interested in seeing about the team dynamics in different startups regarding that, if that's clear, sorry.
Yeah, so I'd say from, I can only speak from one perspective, but I think there's probably yes and no to kind of what you're saying there, and it's probably dependent on the type of startup. There's definitely, you know, there's direction and you need to kind of get the job done as such in terms of you know, meeting objectives and things like that. And yes, it is very fast paced. I'd say there's loads of different routes that our employees have already kind of gone down. And so, for example, in our engineering team, we are having conversations right now about specializing in a particular area. Now, obviously, the area needs to be suitable in terms of our product and what we're aiming for in terms of the development of the product. But we are having conversations about what interests people, what do they feel like they maybe want to specialize in, and offering routes for progression to match those. If people have a real interest in something and we value that person and we can help their interest, we're definitely up for doing that. Equally, we often speak with sort of newer people about whether they're more technical based, or whether they'd like to develop their managerial sort of skills. And at the moment, we're such a small team that really the manager thing isn't coming into play yet, but understanding where people kind of want to go is really good at this stage, because it gives us an opportunity that as we grow, we can help each person sort of with their route, with their kind of chosen route, if that makes sense. So I'd say there's definitely everyone's working to the core objectives of the company, but there's certainly some flexibility in terms of where you end up based on what you end up being interested in and that sort of thing.
Great, thank you, Steph. Does any of the other panelists have any comments on startups? And I know that Shaun, you've had a number of them. Robyn, you work with quite a lot of them, and you too, Helena.
I would say that, and just mirroring what Steph said there, it's just a case of people finding to a degree their niche within a company, and having people work on what is their pretty much their passion is the ideal. You don't want a coder, in our instance, having to work on 3D modeling when it's really not their bag, and equally vice versa. So finding what they're passionate about and having them work on that is best.
Just very quickly as well, I'm sure Steph will pretty agree with me here that not all startups are all about getting things done all day, every day. It is the good startups out there will obviously have goals and KPIs and which they want to meet, but they're also there to, they want to create an environment that's a nice environment in which to work and foster people. They want to keep good people. So it's not all about, I think I did see a comment sort of in the chat there a little bit about being a little bit hesitant. I think it was from yourself actually, Adam, about people having to take on multiple roles. I don't think that's necessarily the case actually, and maybe Steph might disagree or agree with me in that, but it's not all about just kind of meeting goals all day every day. In a startup, absolutely they do have to, but it's not all about that. It's about fostering the best in people and ensuring that they keep really good people and creating an environment in which is which fosters creativeness and sort of positivity, in my experience anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, there was another one in the chat from Carlos, which I think is worth briefly discussing, about internships and how to find them in this space, how to get an internship during a PhD, whether you should, what's the value of doing an internship. I wonder if any of the panel have any thoughts on that.
I mean, I know I, for one, I've done a lot of internships. I don't think we have so much programs so much at the minute, but I think, and it may have changed, but I just emailed a bunch of people and said, these are the awesome things that you're doing, and I would really like to come and be involved for a week or 6 weeks or what have you. And very thankfully, a very large majority of the people that I emailed was like, yeah, come in for the day or come in for the week or something. So I may have been really lucky in that respect. But yeah, in terms of the value, like, I think it's really, really great opportunity to go and actually see how different small businesses actually work. Because to the other's point, talking about startups versus I'm in quite a big corporate at the moment, different organizations have completely different cultures and value different skill sets and give you the opportunity to do what you do best in different ways. So it's something that I would absolutely recommend. I would just be quite brazen about it. Just say, can I come in for a coffee and see what you guys do? I find mostly people just want to help, so they generally will just try their best to accommodate.
Good advice. Be brazen. I think in the description for this session, I said we'd maybe reflect on what is going to happen to jobs in the digital industry during COVID-19. And so I guess it's an interesting time, right? Because a lot of the activity that we're used to doing in person in terms of our workplaces and our lives, our contact with our family, our friends, a lot of that's happening online and remotely now. And so I wondered if any of the panel have any thoughts on what they think, any speculations on the digital industry in the coming kind of 12, 18 months and beyond?
I think from our perspective, we're definitely seeing it as an opportunity in terms of what people might view the new normal as. So I think a lot more people are used to Zoom calls now than they were, and working from home or working not from an office. And so I think there's an opportunity there in that respect, in terms of for us, you know, having to recruit strictly within the Northeast now might not be so much of a thing. We may well be able to recruit nationally and have people work remote and people be happy with that. We certainly understand that we can be, you know, just as productive from working remotely, which is something that we'd never experienced before. So I think from that regard, it's an opportunity, and also being in sort of, particularly within the digital industry, digital seems to be the ones who are primarily embracing or have embraced sort of the period of COVID, and while everyone's sort of, a lot of industries haven't been able to kind of perform. So yeah, I think it's definitely an opportunity for digital. There's obviously other aspects to it as well, but I guess that's one sort of point.
From my point of view, I think Shaun's in the right industry. Very well coming out of this. But I mean, from my point of view as a UX and service design consultant, the way I view this is, I mean, I've also been very lucky. I've been busier than ever during this period. It's been crazy. And I think one of the reasons for that is that there is an acceptance that customer and client experiences are going to change in many, many respects as we come out of this, and I think probably for the foreseeable future. And, you know, organizations are looking at ways in which they can increase revenue, beat the competition, and also, you know, reduce cost to serve, for example, as well. And I mean, so in terms of what I do, in terms of kind of helping these very different cross-sector types and sizes of organizations, I think coming out of this, it's going to be those that kind of embrace the need to transform, and whatever that means to them. And, you know, digital transformation as a term, I think, is horrendously overused. And I think it's, although it's been said more times in the last 3 months than I think it ever has, but I think there is in terms of looking forward into opportunities for people in any of the careers that, you know, that have been highlighted today, you know, Steph and Robyn and Shaun and myself, I think this is a really good time to be going into this. I mean, it's unfortunate that it has happened, but we are having to, you know, change and adapt to a new way of working. And there will be opportunities that come out of that.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would add to that about, you know, the whole COVID thing and what have you is, strangely, and you probably could predict what I'm going to say, but this is normal for us. I'd spend, you know, quite a lot of time at Proto in the hot desk space when it was open. For a while, we had offices in there, and I think we've had an office in every Gateshead business centre. To be honest, I think I've done them all. But well, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's face-to-face meetings are great, and there's nothing, you know, nothing can beat that really. But we're very used to working like this. You know, after the first week of lockdown, I'd get a lot of people asking me like, oh, "How are you finding it? How are you finding it?" Well, exactly the same way as I found it last Wednesday when I worked from home. But I can see a point, maybe in future when we might have a physical space again, but at the minute it's not affecting anything that we're doing. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. We have another conversation going on in the chat about, so there's a number of people on this call who are undertaking a PhD project. Now, PhD, you're studying one thing in great depth for a very long time, and so you build up really niche skills in a particular subject. So I think the question I have about that is, how do you kind of, with that very niche deep skill set, how then do you kind of move from that into a different field, or use that in maybe a job interview situation, or how could you communicate that to employers? I wonder if any of you have some thoughts on that.
Well, I think sorry, no, I mean, in terms of niche skills and communicating those to employers, I think it's quite surprising the number of kind of actual transferable skills that you pick up from that level of research. You know, even if, so for example, how would you relate my training as a glassmaker into engineering? Well, you know, actually as a PhD, when you do your PhD, you've picked up skills where you can learn very quickly, you can think on your feet, you have to be able to defend yourself against challenges, especially once you go into your Viva and what have you. So there's lots of things that you can address there before you even start to kind of drill straight into what it is that you were studying in the first place, which then comes with a kind of font of knowledge. So if you can marry that up with the role that you're looking for, then, you know, it should be a boon to employers in terms of your, you know, transferable skills.
Totally agree. I think well, we're sponsoring a PhD at the moment, and we're doing that to understand what's possible with, you know, cutting, bleeding edge tech. And so, you know, if you've got deep knowledge in a particular area and you're applying for a job where that deep knowledge is sort of valuable, I think, you know, that can only be a positive. I guess separate to that, if maybe you've decided you want to go into something a little bit different or whatever, I think, you know, it's certainly not a deterrent in that, you know, like Robyn, I studied law for about 7 years and then didn't end up sort of going into it as a career, really. And I think that's, you know, it's all part of the journey, and you definitely learn some valuable things along the way. But I don't think I think just, yeah, it's all part of people. Everyone has sort of different paths, and whether you've done something really deep or you've kind of covered various backgrounds, I think as long as you've got a narrative for it, I think that's the strongest thing you can provide. What's the explanation? Why has it brought you here, and where you're wanting to go? And I think that's fine to kind of describe that.
Completely agree with you, actually, Steph. I mean, I didn't talk about how I've got to where I am. I mean, in a very formal life, I mean, my degree's in music, and I did a PGCE. I was a secondary school music and history teacher for several years before I got out, thankfully. And, you know, for what I've been doing over the last 10 years has been pretty much self-taught. I've self-taught, I've taken online courses. I have got a master's degree, but again, that's in an unrelated subject. It is kind of in urban planning. You might be able to tell from the bookcase behind me. I'm very into my architecture and my urban planning, but I think that kind of lends itself to actually what I do in terms of the blueprinting and the service design and the planning out of things. It's kind of that logical side of me. But just, you know, just so you know, it's you know, it's not all about, you know, as Steph quite rightly says there, it's not all about maybe particularly what you've done in the past, it's what you want to do going forward and how are you willing to make that happen for yourself. I really, really wanted to make this happen. I've known for a lot of years, and it just was a case of ensuring it did, and I have. So don't get kind of too hung up on the, you know, on everything that you've done in academia till now. Yeah, so just a little bit of I came a very, very strange way round into UX.
Okay, I think we've got maybe time just for like one last question, and there's one on the chat from Leora, which is probably quite a nice one to end on. Leora, would you like to ask your question, or should I ask it? Oh. So Leora's question is, what are the kinds of roles specifically where you're looking for human-computer interaction expertise? And she's asking particularly about non-developer or designer roles. Okay. Does anyone have an answer?
So I think we'd, you know, similarly to what we've kind of just talked about, I guess it depends on the interests of the person in terms of what role they're sort of wanting. But we would, having those transferable skills and understanding of other areas other than the kind of core area to what you're in is only a benefit. And so, you know, if someone was looking for a role in product development or customer success or whatever, having that kind of wider knowledge and an understanding of perhaps maybe how something's developed or whatever is only going to benefit you in that role, particularly in a tech environment, I guess. So I'd say it could be any role if you're interested in it, and you've got the right kind of skills and qualities. So yeah.
Completely agree with Steph. I think it really depends on the organisation that you're working with. I mean, if you're working for a UX agency, for example, or an organisation such as WordNerds, you know, it's quite specific. It might be that, you know, you go in as a role, but there are also, and I think this is forgotten about quite often, there are also UX, UI roles within much larger organizations where that is not actually what they do on a day-to-day basis. You know, they might be manufacturing, or they might be in subsea, or they could be in, I'm just thinking of who I've worked with over the last year, they could be in health and safety, they could be where actually what they have or what they do is they have developed an internal UX or service design team. So that's also something to bear in mind as well. It might not be always an agency role that you can actually really, you know, excel in. It could be as part of a team in an organization where that's actually not what they do. They don't deliver it for people, but or for clients. It's to improve their own, you know, user and client experiences.
I mean, talking from kind of, I can only really speak on behalf of kind of our engineering team, but, you know, very similar to what's been said already, kind of what makes us powerful as a team is the fact that we're all from very, very different backgrounds. Across the whole 10 of us as engineers, I don't think 2 of us have got the same career path or skill set. And we don't have anyone with a HCI background. So, you know, having those sort of skills to complement a team of people who are building new products or building new services or anything like that is, you know, absolutely useful. You know, if you set that up against, you know, an artist, a designer, we've got a games tech person, we've got someone who used to be an electrician on the rigs, like a whole variety of things that, you know, a HCI degree or HCI background could really complement in kind of different ways.
What we would say is, when it comes to HCI or anything like that, it's like, you know, if you're looking to get into XR, do your homework and let's know what you can bring to the table. I mean, we pretty much look at and follow the guidance from the likes of Unity, Unreal, Oculus, Vive, Microsoft, all those people when it comes to not necessarily rules, but, you know, sort of best practice and guidance for developing fully immersive experiences where your UX is the environment you're in. And what we do tend to veer away from is replicating what we've all encountered, say, on the web. You know, buttons. Why do we need to replicate buttons in a 3D spatial environment? I can get why we needed to do them on a 2D screen, but we need to think differently when we're designing for environments. It's probably a conversation I need to have with Helena about a new course. Yeah.
Anytime, Shaun, anytime.
No. Okay.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much. We've now just hit 5 o'clock, so I think we should wrap this session up. But can I ask everyone, please, on the call to maybe use the applause button, or if you want to come onto your video and just give a virtual round of applause to our speakers, our fantastic speakers this afternoon. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone who attended, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially in this heat, you all need to get outside.
Yeah, that's what I reckon.
I'm getting redder and redder here.
We all do now. Go and enjoy some sunshine, late afternoon sunshine. So thanks everyone, and yes, and I think the HCI Summer Festival will be back tomorrow with more interesting content. So hopefully see some of you back here tomorrow. Cool. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Bye.